watching a movie, and it's a pretty good movie, very well written, a fascinating story filled with interesting characters and very complex directorial choices that, taken individually, could be seen as hackneyed or stereotypical, but when taken as a whole, you see that they create a very well crafted story, and you're going along thinking this is something kind of special, and then the ending happens and it just leaves the most sour taste in your mouth. And not in the way that it's supposed to leave a sour taste in your mouth, at least I don't think. More in the way that you feel like this ending flew in the face of everything that the film had been setting up. Maybe I'm missing something, but it really feels like what they chose to do with the ending of this film really is a disservice to everything else they tried to do in this film, at least from an initial viewing. So let's talk about this film. So, I'm trying to think of how the best way to start the description. So, Matt Smith and his partner, Caleb Landry Jones, are a rich gay couple, and they've bought this place in the middle of the Moroccan desert. I'm not sure why they would do that if they had that much money. I'm sure there's other places you could buy, fancy houses. And they're having a party for all of the most vapid, horrible European friends that they can they can gather. The top of the guest list, or at least the characters most important for our viewing purposes, are a husband and wife played by Ralph Fiennes and Jessica Chastain, who are your typical angry married couple who long ago have decided they hate each other, and yet they're still married. Ralph Fiennes is a doctor who is dealing with a malpractice suit. He is basically becoming a high-functioning alcoholic. Jessica Chastain is his long-suffering wife. And on their way out into the Moroccan desert to attend this weekend gala, they hit and kill a local Arab boy who is trying to sell them fossils that they dig up in the middle of the desert. Much to, that's a bad sentence, sorry about that. They don't try to hide everything about it. They bring the body to the palatial estate in the middle of the desert. The family is notified. The police rule it an accidental death, but the boy's father comes and demands that Ralph Fiennes go with him to this kind of the middle of nowhere to help him bury his son. So Ralph Fiennes is whisked off to the middle of the Moroccan desert. Jessica Chastain stays behind at the palatial palace, and the story unfolds. So what's really interesting about the way this story is told is it sets up a lot of visual shorthand that, it's going to use to turn on its head throughout the rest of the film. What I mean by that is when we first meet Jessica Chastain and Ralph Fiennes, our minds are kind of already made up about what kind of people they are and what kind of characters they are. Ralph Fiennes, just basically everything he does for the first 30 minutes of this movie is set up to show us that he's a reprehensible human being, someone who, doesn't give a shit about this kid that he killed. He's trying to get out of it. He talks down to everybody. He's just a wretched person. Meanwhile, the Jessica Chastain character is seen as kind of a put upon wife, maybe not the best person in the world, but she's actually traumatized by the incident. She is, she wants to go talk to the father when Ralph Fiennes doesn't. So we're automatically set up to believe this is the person that we're going to like, and this is the person that we are meant to not like. But what happens throughout the course of the story, and this is where some really fascinating storytelling, both in the script writing and the directing, comes into play. When Ralph Fiennes leaves the party to head out into the desert with the boy's father, we begin to get these juxtapositions of scenes. Jessica Chastain stays behind to lavish in luxury with these, self-absorbed, self-important, party people, drinking, doing cocaine, and just acting like the very worst of, degenerate European stereotypes, and as a result of which she becomes a worse person than she started out. We see that she is looking for an excuse to basically act like a terrible person. She's been given permission to let her hair down and just indulge in every negative impulse she's ever had. Ralph Fiennes, on the other hand, as he is whisked further and further away from the excess of the party and taken deeper and deeper into a world where people live in less than squalor, he is forced to actually face his actions and face what he did, put a name and a history and a people to this boy that he killed, and he actually becomes a better person. So it's a very fascinating. For a while there, I was wondering why they were doing the juxtaposition of scenes, and then it kind of hit me, is that she's becoming worse while he's slowly starting to acknowledge his own guilt and become better for it. So this is not a new concept, this is not a new story, but the way it's told and the way it's acted and directed are quite wonderful. In a way, I don't think you can help that when you have the cast that they've assembled for this. I mean, you've got 3 truly amazing actors with Ralph Fiennes, Jessica Chastain, and Matt Smith. Matt Smith is quietly becoming, I think, one of the best actors of his generation. I truly believe that. His performances, even if the movie is not good, like Morbius, he is usually good in it, and he's doing that wonderful British thing of playing a wide variety of characters. I will say, though, that the one constant is that he tends to be playing, if not out and out villains, guys who are a little shy of their moral compass. You know what I mean? Their moral compass is pointing a little bit more towards south than normal. He just has that wonderful air about him, and Matt Smith's always been my favorite Doctor, but it's so fascinating to see him play these wide range of somewhat less than savory characters, and just how much of a knack he has for it, and just how smoothly he makes that transition. I also must say that I really want to see him and Jessica Chastain in another movie together, because they just work very well off each other. Like, their scenes together, it really does sound like these are not people reciting lines, but people having actual conversations. Sometimes actors just meld very well together, and the two of them really do. And of course, what can you say about Ralph Fiennes, except he's Ralph Fiennes, and he does an amazing job here, and it's all very subtle. This is not big, Lord Voldemort acting. This is, stage present Schindler's List type stuff. Very, very subtle, and yet the transformation of the character is so clear. It's a masterclass in acting. Pardon me while I adjust the clamshell there. However, I do believe that the best actor in the film is Ishmael Cantor, and I hope I'm saying that name correctly, and if I'm not, I deeply apologize, who plays the boy's father, who gives just a miraculous performance, and so much of it is done in silence. When they're driving Ralph Fiennes out seemingly further and further out into the middle of nowhere, and he's just glaring at him, and then when he finally does talk, I don't mean this to undercut the seriousness of the film, but it's very silent Bob. When he does talk, it's when he has something very important to say, and you remember it throughout the rest of the film. So I really felt like his performance was the most powerful in this film. And again, that's saying something when you have three really great actors. Sorry, I'm really tired, so I keep stumbling over my words there. But when you have three really great actors kind of acting as your tent poles and holding up the film, I will say, in terms of negative criticism, is I get what they're doing. I really do get what they are going for, and showing just these party goers, all of them white Europeans, in just the level of decadence and self-importance and just shit that they do, all while these poor Native Arabs who are having to work for very little money. It's probably part of the reason that Matt Smith and his partner ended up there. So I get that that the whole purpose of it is to show that juxtaposition. I will say that I feel, and I had to say this correctly without sounding terrible, and normally I usually say that if you have to think that, it's probably because what you're thinking is going to sound terrible. So I feel like the film looks at it through a very black and white perspective. The white people are all very, very piggish and horrible, which I guess, gotta be honest, we kind of are. I mean, and everyone else is a good and noble person, just looking at us as, for what pigs we are. I don't know, it just felt like, while everything else in the film is so very well written, I felt like that aspect of it, and I believe that's there to shine a brighter light on the Ralph Fiennes journey of coming to understand the people that he is surrounded by, especially when the people that he's surrounded by are people that, Westerners, white people, let's be honest, are trained for quite some time, quite a couple of decades, to automatically mistrust, and to always think the worst of. And I understand the stereotypical behavior of those characters is there to shine a greater light on them, that they think they're so much better and they think they're so much more enlightened, and in fact they're just they're pigs. It's almost kind of like the Get Out thing, where the villains think they're so evolved and and open-minded, when in fact they're just practicing a different type of racism. So, but these people aren't even that well written. They're very, very clear as to how horrible they actually are. So I don't know. It just felt like, in that respect, those characters were very flat and one-dimensional, which is sad when you consider the acting that's going on, and that any dimension given to them, I think, was all due to the actors. I think the writing didn't do them any favors. That's my impression of it, at the very least. I also have to say, and again, I understand that this is probably there to highlight what I was talking about before, but the thing that really got me was Caleb Landry Jones, who, the last time I saw him, to my knowledge, was as Banshee in X-Men First Class. But just playing the most stereotypical gay character that I've seen in a long time. I haven't seen anything that overblown since watching South Park, which does it as satire. But this one was taken absolutely serious, and I don't know. I know that it was supposed to make me uncomfortable, but I think they went a little too much with it, because I did not like that portrayal or representation at all. Matt Smith was very good, because he's Matt fucking Smith, but I was not a big fan of that portrayal. There are a lot of really interesting things about this movie, especially from a directorial standpoint. One of the first things you notice, this movie sets you on edge right away and subverts expectations. I think that if there's a theme in this movie that I can identify after one viewing, it's subverting expectations. Because one of the first things this movie does is it rolls the credits. Like, the end credits that we usually walk out on, it rolls them at the beginning, and it rolls them backwards, starting with like the last thing we normally see, and then working its way up to the actors with just their name on the screen and then the title. So right out of the gate, it's subverting your expectations. It's not showing you what you traditionally think you're going to see in a movie. And again, I didn't realize, at first I thought like something had gone wrong with the download, or not the download, the streaming of it. And I was like, what? Why is it showing the end credits? And then realizing that it was showing the opening scenes interspersed with it. So this movie is all about changing your expectations, and that's a really fun directorial choice to illustrate that. So on the whole, this movie is really good. It's again, it's thoughtful, it's well acted. The dialogue is very well written. I think there are a few minor flaws in it, but I think the reason I'm willing to forgive those flaws is because I understand that they are all in service of the greater narrative structure and the greater thematic structure. So even though they're choices I don't necessarily like, I understand why they're there, as opposed to choices that are just bad and make no sense. So if the movie had ended where I hoped it had ended, then it'd be getting a very rave review from me. But it doesn't. And this is where we're getting into spoiler territory. So if you don't want to know how this movie ends, please, log off or go watch it and then come back or whatever. But be warned, spoilers forthcoming. So as Ralph Fiennes and Jessica Chastain are driving back from the party, they reach the spot in the road where they had hit the boy, and they suggest that they're going to get out and show their respects. They see in the middle of the street the boy's friend, who we'd seen earlier in the film, who has been sent there by the boy's father to kill Ralph Fiennes. And he does. And to me, I think I know why they did it. But in all honesty, I feel like this is the worst ending because it flies in the face of what you've been trying to do. Again, the film thematically seems to me about subverting expectations. Ralph Fiennes' character didn't know these people and didn't know what they had planned for him. And the movie is very tense because again, it's a white person, and their perspective of Arabs and Arab culture, and fearing that they're going to drive him out into the middle of nowhere and like murder him, or torture him or something, because that's the news we hear, and that's what the media feeds us. So it's what we automatically think, And the movie's whole purpose is showing that no, he gets out there, he sees the way they live, he knows who this boy is, not like in great detail. It's just little things he keeps. The life he was leading, the monologue his father has, and he has changed. He has changed, and when he says that he is sorry towards the end of the film as he's riding back to the house, You know that he actually means it, versus when he said it previously, where it was just kind of a lip service. The people didn't behave in the way he expected, and the experience he had made him better. But by putting in this ending where he is being set up to be shot and killed, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, it just goes back on its heels and reinforces all the horrible stereotypes that the film went through great lengths to dispel. And I feel like this movie, and it could be just because I just got done teaching a unit on Greek tragedy. I feel like this movie is really trying to go towards the Shakespearean Elizabethan model of tragedy, wherein characters have to die as punishment for their misdeeds, and the accepting of your death is seen as a noble gesture. And I feel like this film would have done so much better, and it would have served everything that the rest of the movie had laid out had it followed the Greek model of saying the tragedy is that this man, Ralph Fiennes' character, has to go on and live with what he did. That, he's not, that sacrificing himself is a momentary thing, whereas the other choice is one he has to live with for the rest of his life. And, I just feel like that would have just been so much better than what they did, or if they'd done something like had the boy's father be there and talk the young man out of killing Ralph Fiennes, saying, yes, I was mad, yes, I wanted you to do this, but now I've changed my mind. I want him to live with it. I don't want, we have to stop the cycle of violence, or whatever. And then I would have been like, okay. Or if the boy himself had made that choice. But going with what they did, I just feel like it's a complete disservice to everything they tried so hard to set up. And I was very disappointed in that ending. And that's a shame, because the rest of the movie, if it had ended in a different way, or, anything I mentioned, I probably would be willing to give it a much higher grade than what I'm gonna give it. So yeah. So with that in mind, let's just get to it. So final grade for The Forgiven. Like I say, I would have given this an A, maybe even an A plus for everything, but I just can't do that now. And I think what I'm gonna have to do, I'm gonna give it a solid B. And I would have even been inclined to give it a B plus. And there's part of me even screaming, give it a B minus, because that ending really did a real disservice to it. But I'm learning which is funny for how long I've been doing these reviews and how I'm just now trying to do this. I'm trying to be a little bit more conservative when I do these grades, because I know I'm getting a gut reaction. So it's possible if I think about it, I may up it or lower it. But I'm going a solid B on this one. That's just the way it's going to be. So there you go. I do think it's worth it. I think it's worth it for the writing and the acting and the character development. And the directing. I think I said directing. It's worth it. It's a good movie to watch. It's a good think piece. And I'd be interested to know what other people thought of the ending. Did it weaken the story, or did it add to it? What are your thoughts? I'm curious to know. So there you have it. And maybe that, again, I said this with other movies, maybe that's the point of it. It's something to talk about. It gets the movie into the dialogue and actually has you talking about themes and character, which I always think is a good thing. So there you have it. That's my review. So thank you very much for joining me. Thanks for coming along. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.